Welcome to the space where we reveal our personal humanity to reconnect with our shared humanity. Let's begin our conversation. And y'all, I am so excited about the two humans we're going to talk to kicking off this season. First, we have Elisa Camahort Page. Did I get that right? Elisa.
Yeah.
Elisa. Yeah. I got nervous. I was like, here they are. And like, you know, my brain gets all crazy. It's like, oh, cool guest. And that's what happens. Okay. So Elisa, she speaks extensively, LinkedIn learning instructor, author, COO, writer, editor, serves on boards. You're vegan and you love purple in your hair.
I'm repurpling tomorrow because I'm going on vacation. So I want to have it fully purple for vacation.
Perfect. I mean, I love that because purple is, of course, of royalty, which you kind of your aura exudes. And then we've got our second amazing human, Jory D. Jardins, which means of the Gardens. And yes, that will come back. So take notes, everybody. She is a serial entrepreneur, sits on multiple boards, co-founder of BlogHer, venture capitalist, fractional CMO, CXO, and badass dancer who busted quite a move when Run from Run DMC DJs. Is that correct? Is that accurate? Do we have that?
Honestly, I'm trying to figure out where you dug that up because
that's BlogHer. That is BlogHer 14.
I am just very excited to speak with you two because of your dedication to humanity. And what was ironic to me was that your last name means of the garden. And it seems like based on the bio that I read that both of you have been planting seeds all along the way. Is that fair?
I think that's a nice metaphor. And it's in fact something we thought about really explicitly back when we started BlogHer with our third co-founder, Lisa Stone. When we thought about our mission, we came up with this mission statement that was to create opportunities for women in our community to pursue. And then there were a variety of things: education, economic empowerment, community, exposure. And we had a conversation, I always remember, about how we don't want to say we're going to deliver it. We don't want to say we're going to make, that any of this is required. We were going to say, we're going to create the opportunities. We're going to plant those seeds in your metaphor. And people are going to take some opportunities, not take others, that were whoever they are. We wanted them to feel like there was something we had planted that was growing for them. And I kind of think we still take that when Jory and I started Optionality late last year. I think that was still our philosophy, which is if you want to bring everybody to the table, if you want to be like inclusive, you can't give everybody nobody wants the same thing. So there's got to be a lot to choose from. There's got to be some rich diversity.
What I have found in my DEI work, and I'm just curious to hear from both of you, is that at the basis of everything, everybody wants the same access, same rights, and to live in peace the way that they want to live. And my theory is, as long as you're not doing harm to yourself or others, and you're not trying to force your lifestyle on me, God bless you, go. It's not my business to get in that. So, and I think that's really, as humans, where I think I know better than Elisa and Jory, that's where it gets sticky, right? And things go sideways. But Jory, sowing the seeds of women's liberation, human liberation. I mean, welcome to Hidden Human, ladies. I am just, if you can't tell, I'm already kind of like vibrating with excitement that you're here.
Well, first of all, thank you for that wonderful metaphor, because my daughter, whose middle name is Desjardins, thinks that her name is Olive, and she always cracks jokes. Everyone calls me Olive Garden. I hate that name. Oh. And I'm like, honey, it's a beautiful name. It means something. Of the Gardens. So thank you. I appreciate that. So one of the things that we did, and I'm always doing this, and maybe it's annoying, but Elisa and I do this constantly, where we pull these threads, because we did create BlogHer. We had a very set idea of what we wanted to do. And in so many ways, there are similar threads with Optionality. And one of the ways, which Elisa touched on, when we started BlogHer, we knew that there was just this enormous community of mostly women, men too. There were men in the community. They just had so many things in common with the women in the community. So they sort of became honorary BlogHers. There were so many different objectives for why they were blogging. And some of them wanted They were passionate about a topic and they wanted to connect with others like them. Others were stay-at-home moms or working moms and they needed to have community. They like to share. Others wanted to make some money and monetize what they love to do. Some of them were writing books. Some of them were thought leaders. And so the idea here is we all have this passion in common. We're not going to tell you what you need to do with it, but we are going to help you figure out how to do what you want to do better and help you to expand that. So similarly, today with Optionality, we have a similar perspective on that, where we all know that work is shifting, our careers are changing. Why? It's different for some people. Some are caregivers and their lives are changing. Others are saying, you know, I've been doing this for 20, 25 years. I'm ready to change it up. Others got laid off and realized work isn't working for me anymore. I need to figure out something new that I want to do. Others are looking for more meaning in what they're doing. Whatever that is, and I suspect that most of our members are a little bit of everything. We are just there to help you get from point A to point B, but faster and in a more effective way. So we're not going to tell you why you should change it up. We're just going to help you change it up.
Well, and I think there's another key piece to this that I see both of you missing is that you beautifully hold space. You beautifully hold space and you curate that space of safety. I mean, I watched a video, and I might get this wrong, y'all, of what is it? Sparkle corn? Did I get that right?
Oh, now I'm starting to get why you know that Run DMC bit. Okay.
Have eyes and ears everywhere. But what I was about to say was that I'm watching this video and I'm watching women from all different backgrounds just sway together and sing together and be together. And, you know, to me, one of the most frustrating things I'd love for you two to weigh in on this is that sometimes we as women are our own worst enemies. And to see grown women like pull each other together and like just really have fun and be themselves, that was magical. And you two set the tone for that.
I was just going to say that Sparkle Corn was actually a community event that we ended up creating space for within our event. So it started outside the space associated. And then we started that and a bunch of other events. We sort of brought them into the fold and gave them infrastructure and resources because we'd rather have you more accessible to the whole community and have you inside rather than make you feel like you have to hide outside. And so that year, you know, Sparkle Corn was part of the official event. It didn't start that way. It was the brainchild of other community members. But I do think that the tone of setting the tone of inclusion and setting the tone of holding space for people, you know, does come from, in our case, it came from us as the founders of Blogger. But I also think when you talk about women sometimes being our own worst enemies, I also think that is a tone that is set. You know, before BlogHer, I worked in traditional high tech. It was already my third career. And I worked in very male-dominated careers because before high tech, I was in commodities. And and I was often the only woman in the room, almost, you know, always. And I got to be one of the more senior women, and there were maybe a handful of us. And the tone is set from the top about whether that's impactful or not. And I think for a lot of women, if you were raised in a career where you knew the company was going to identify one woman to be theirs, look, we're not sexist. We have this woman vice president, or apply that to any other marginalized group, then you were brought up in a context where it's the other women you got to worry about. And yeah, that rolls down. And also I think what rolls down is that women end up having this pressure, as do other marginalized groups, that if you're the only woman in the room and you fuck something up, you are representing not just yourself as an individual. This goes for having bad bosses too. You don't represent just yourself. You're all of a sudden representing your whole gender in a way you never set out to do and really have no interest in doing, but you know it. So all the times when I hear stories about, you know, when women aren't able to support one another, it's often because there's something overarching that they don't control that is rolling down to them and instigating that behavior as a mechanism for survival. And I think it hurts women's feelings when a woman isn't the greatest boss. When you have a toxic woman boss, it hurts your feelings because you're like, I thought we were going to kind of be in this together. You know?
Yes, it does. I'm so glad you said that because I'm a highly sensitive person and my feelings have been hurt a lot. Like I look at women and I always try to start with finding the potential in the person, right? If you strip away all the stories and titles and all that nonsense, like who are they at their core? And I think, no, I know I'm going to drop the I think. When I'm around them, that they have the potential to really lift each other up and not play into that old patriarchal paradigm that we're describing, it's so exciting. And the things that we create together are amazing and sharing and all of that love and, you know, all of that. And then you see a woman whose only leadership has been modeled by a white, straight, Christian, whatever man, and they have no other model, then they're going to behave and internalize that misogyny and sexism, which I've seen. And I'm like,
I think you would appreciate this. I think the other piece of it is, of course, lifting each other up, but it's also about being who you are and having full freedom. And I think that's what you saw at Sparklecorn. We had other parties. We had Queersphere. We had Blogalicious for Black and Brown bloggers. And I went to all of the parties, by the way, and everyone was invited. But the idea was, it was a place where you could come as you were. You didn't have to pretend to be anyone you weren't. And I think right now, the workplace, you do have to pretend it to a large extent. You can talk about the other gigs that you have when you go to work. You can't talk about, oh, I've got a sick child at home or I'm caregiving. You just have to show up and be this person who is, you are an employee, right? And I think that it puts a lot of pressure on people. And I think people are getting a little sick of it. COVID, I think, was such a forcing function because it forced us to be so present with all of these other identities. You couldn't avoid it. We were forced to work from home. We were forced to have to figure out childcare, and everybody was in the same boat. And now that we are no longer in this crisis state, we're thinking, well, that part of it wasn't so bad. I kind of liked people knowing that, oh, by the way, I skip out at 4 to go on a hike because that's how I stay sane. Or, you know, I actually appreciated having some time to myself to go bake on Tuesdays, whatever that looked like, right? And to have to go back into this, oh, now we're going to cover up again and be someone else and be who, you know, our work selves only exclusively, it's just really hard to swallow.
There were always people who didn't really have to worry about childcare, who were able to have flexibility, who were able to, you know, have freedom in their work. But those were usually privileged people. And it didn't look the same. You know, nobody questioned, you know, they just were at a level where no one was asking them in any kind of granular way why they were leaving at this time. Well, they had a meeting or they were doing a sales call or whatever it was. And they had paid help, paid housekeeping, paid childcare, paid transportation for their, like all of those things. And so people were privileged. When the lockdown happened, even people who were privileged were kind of, like Jory said, stuck in the same boat. And I think on the one hand, I think and I hope that it gave those people a bird's eye view of what the rest of us were going through. But I also think it gave people who had been living the sandwich squeezed, you know, hard life with the commute and the kids and the childcare and all of that, it gave them a respite to see, oh, this is what it's like when I'm not running everywhere with my head cut off all the time and always late and always overscheduled and always double booked. This is what it's like to have like space to think. And I think that space, especially born out of an existential crisis where so you had all this space and time, but you were also really worried about life being short and lots of death and fear and anxiety. The combination of those two things, I think, was a powerful, powerful fire starter for people to be like, I cannot do what I have been doing. there has got to be a better way. I have got to build myself a different future of work right now.
That's a lot of the conversations I'm having with my clients right now is either I'm lost and I don't know who I am because they didn't take the time after COVID to like reset, recalibrate, refresh, reboot, whatever you want to call it. Or I worked at home, did 46 more minutes of work a day, according to Sherm. So that whole thing about productivity not being, it's a big lie. Listen to it. I got more work done. I was present for my family, etc. Now, wait a second. You want me to come in? Why? You know, and it's mind-boggling to me. But I'm really curious about who the leaders are that have inspired you to the most, and what were the lessons that you took for them?
I will say this because I'm well, and I don't want this to sound like a cheat, but it's totally true. I don't have a shining light who ever since I was 5 years old, I said, I want to be just like that person. But I am continually excited by people who, and I think the thread is people who are calling their own shots and leading the lives that they were meant to lead. And it was totally self-defined. So, we recently had interviewed on Optionality Guy Kawasaki, who was a hero of ours. We actually connected with Guy very early when we were building BlogHer, and he gave us some great advice. The thing about Guy is that he is in continual reinvention mode, and he's always trying new things. He's still Guy. He's still, the great human that we all know him to be. But now he's a great human who's surfing. And now he's a great human who's starting a new business. And let's try this out. And he's writing a book. And he's just guided by his passion. I'm going to do this. And I'm now going to move in this direction. And I tried to nail down like this. I'm big on structure and trying to provide a bit of structure around that. And people who have figured that out of how they've been able to create their own roadmap and follow it, it's the hardest thing ever. So Guy is a hero, but there are other heroes. Another one we interviewed was Christina Wallace, who wrote The Portfolio Life. Another person who just said, you know what? I kind of want to do it all. I want to produce musicals. I am a musician. I want to teach at Harvard. She's got this portfolio of things that she does and has figured out how to make it all work and be a parent. And this sounds so simple, but to do it and to create structure around it, and she wrote a book about it, is a totally different level. And that I aspire to. It's not about how famous the person is. It's about how they have figured out how to make their life happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. And I love to hear that about Guy Kawasaki, because I try to reinvent myself all the time. Like, why can't I try that? Last year, my husband and I hiked the Grand Canyon. And I was like, my thought was, why can't a 47-year-old woman with cranky knees hike the Grand Canyon? And we did. So, okay, Elisa.
Well, from a career perspective, my mom was like the prototypical second wave feminist who got married the June she graduated from college, had 3 kids by the time she was 27. And then decided she needed to go to work. She wanted to work. And she did that probably when I was about 11-ish. Mm-hmm. And my little sister was probably 8. I think she was in 2nd grade. And didn't really sit all that well with my more traditionally minded dad. And she just found her calling. She was she started like as a part-time research associate and worked her way up to be their first female VP. And she didn't retire till she was 70. And her last company was something she started with another colleague. And so when I and my first career that I wanted to pursue was in the arts. I got a theater major. I moved to New York to like sing and act. So once I let that idea go at the early age of 25, I really, that was almost really helpful because it was all I was thinking I was going to do for the last dozen years. And then at 25, you're like, you know what? I don't actually want to do that. Now you're free. you're like liberated from your own expectations of yourself.
Mm.
And I figured I could do anything, but she was kind of a role model for you just start where you can start and see where you can take it. So like I said, I worked in commodities because I started working for a family friend. And then I decided, oh, this tech thing seems like it's pretty important here in Silicon Valley where I live. I guess I should do that. And in order to get myself in with a company, I took a job as an admin in the marketing department of a hardware company. And I said, let me just see if I'm good at it. Let me just see if I like it. And then, it turned out that I was, and I did. And so I just it was the dot-com boom times. I just kind of climbed the ladder from there. And so that she was like the model for that kind of just go get yourself in there, then show them what you got, and then keep fighting and growing. I have a totally different role model or hero of mine is Stephen Sondheim, the composer, because he's an iconoclast. He didn't really care if everybody loved him. He had a point of view. He wanted to share it. On the surface, he was intellectual and kind of esoteric sometimes, but at its heart, there's so much emotion and real understanding of human nature and the human spirit. And there's just a point in every one of his shows where I just find myself crying because he has touched something underneath all this super complicated and interesting music and very clever lyrics, but somehow he has gotten to the heart and doing it and on his own terms as an iconoclast who doesn't care if everybody likes him. And I struggle with wanting everybody to like me. So I really try to remember that maybe not everyone liked him, but now they revere him, So maybe that's the better path.
I love that. I mean, music is one of my love languages, and I can't, there are songs. I mean, I love everybody from Eminem to Barry Manilow. So since we're on music, we'll take a little diversion for a second, but what was the first song that you ever heard that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end? I know exactly where it was and what was going on. So Jory, you first.
Well, first of all, I feel like I'm learning so much because I've known Elisa for over 20 years, and knowing that she actually cares if people like her is news to me because she's always been a peacekeeper, but Elisa's Elisa, it's like take it or leave it. This is who I am. And that's kind of how I think of Elisa, but I'll answer your question. So when I was 6 years old, my mom had this, kind of crazy record collection. And I remember it vividly because we had like one of those really old 70s houses where like we had a bar that you could open up in the wood paneled home and you could slide those doors open. And then there was a bar. And my mom's record collection. Yeah. So it. Yeah. And it was very creaky. And so she had a record collection, and Donna Summer all day long. Like I would just play that record. I couldn't stop myself. I could not stop myself. And Last Dance was, just almost everything she did, I think was the ultimate. Yeah. And I still think she's one of the greatest musicians ever, singers ever. She's just was so talented.
I think there's no doubt about that.
She's amazing. Yeah. And if you haven't watched it on Netflix, The Greatest Night in Pop, which is the whole documentary of how they made We Are the World. And Donna Summer stayed behind after everybody left. And she looked at Quincy Jones and started crying. And he's like, what's the matter? And she goes, I didn't want it to be over. I was like, I love you, Donna Summer. Something. Okay, since we revealed something about Elisa, people don't know about Elisa. I will tell you something that many people don't know about me. But when I was 3 years old, my dad had a T-Bird. I don't know what year it was. I know the thing was maroon. It was huge, and it had white, either vinyl, probably bucket seats in it, and an 8-track. And the 8-track he used to play was Hot in the City, or what was the other one?
Bad Girls.
And so I was 3, and I would walk around the house singing Bad Girls, not knowing what I was singing. So yeah. All right, Elisa.
Well, that was an easy one because there is toot toot, beep beep.
Yeah.
So like I used to, that. I mean, you're a kid. What do you expect?
Yeah.
Well, one of my earliest memories, I don't know if it's the first song that ever gave me goosebumps. So one of my earliest memories was that my parents used to do that thing where I don't even know if they had to make me. Like, I would get up and sing when people were over. And the song I used to love to sing was, I love you, baby. Because my oldest, so I come from, my dad's side of the family is a large Hispanic family. And I have like 30 cousins. And my oldest cousin, my youngest aunt is only 10 years older than me. So she was a teenager at about this time. And my oldest cousin is just probably her age, maybe a year or two younger. And we would go to my grandparents' house every Sunday, whole family. And there was the teenagers would kind of end up in the back room. And there was a record player, and they had Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons albums. And I, of course, they were so cool. And I wanted to like be on the periphery and like listen to what they were doing. So I'm sure now that you say it, I'm sure that's where I got that song from.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you the only reason I know is because my husband, Brian, every other Saturday hosts a karaoke at the dive bar in our small town, Narberth, Pennsylvania. And we sing to each other. So I sang that to him one time.
Aw.
So, but my story about like the hairs on the back of my neck, I was 19. I was in a dorm room at Holy Cross. Let's just say there was lots of black lights and tapestries. I'll just leave that there. And all of a sudden, the first notes of Pink Floyd's "Wish You Were Here" came in.
Kelly, I have to just share this because it's almost crazy that you mentioned that song. So I used to dance. I used to perform in a dance troupe. And I also
I never knew that about Jory. I knew Jory sang, but I never knew that she was in a dance troupe.
Oh, no. I mean, no, didn't sing well, but I did dance pretty well. And I would choreograph songs, or I'd choreograph to music. And I was in this Pink Floyd phase. And I actually did a duet with one of my friends to "Wish You Were Here." And I remember someone said after that, "You know, you can dance to that song." I figured out how.
I would like to see video. I would like to see video of that.
I was going to say,
I have it.
I love that. So yeah, I mean, well, okay. As leaders, how does music factor into your work, and how does it impact you? Like, let's kind of go back to what we were talking about with artists. And when I was listening to you both, I was thinking, I am not a member of the Beehive. I am not a Swiftie, but I really enjoy their music. I really enjoy them as women. But what I really respect most are things like going to AMC and cutting out the movie distributors and releasing them directly so they can it's a smarter business decision, right?
Yes.
The fact that those two who are powerful women didn't play into that paradigm that we were talking about before, being pitted against each other, right? You notice anytime that subject is brought up, it's not brought up by either one of them. So I'm just wondering, like, for me, I look at them from their business decisions and go, okay, what lesson can I take and what can I apply from that? So I'm just wondering if you weave music into your work, because performer, it seems like music is a formative thing for both of you.
Well, I want to say something about the Beyonce and Taylor Swift.
Please.
I saw both movies. I saw neither concert, although I have seen Beyonce live a couple of times. I've never seen Taylor live, but I did go see both movies. And I found both movies very moving. And what I found very moving about them, in addition to admiring their business, clearly they are business women, everything you said, absolutely. But what I found most moving is that in each case, the focus on the audience, you could see that these were people who felt like this person sees me and hears me and loves me for who I am. And this is a space for me. This is a community. And they are not the same audience, although there's lots of overlap, but they're a different audience. But in each case, the rapturous response of their audiences is because their audiences aren't really audiences, they're communities. They feel like they are in community and that they are really seen and heard. And to me, that is a powerful lesson for anyone now trying to build something and wondering how can you build something where people give you grace, give you the benefit of the doubt. There were many mistakes we made with BlogHer. There will be many mistakes we made with Optionality. But if we are in community with people and are accountable, transparent, all the great community attributes, we will be forgiven for our trespasses because we are telling people that they are seen and heard. Even, I always used to quote a play by Christopher Durang called Sister Mary Ignatius Explains It All for You. And the character is Sister Mary Ignatius is a terrible, evil, like mean nun teacher. But she has this great line where she says, God always answers your prayers. It's just sometimes he says no. Mm-hmm. And that's what being a community manager is, or a community leader. Mm-hmm. You hear, you respond, but you literally can't make everybody happy. So that's what I found really, really compelling about, in addition to their talents, in addition to their business sense, in addition to their camaraderie, the way they've built community and make those people feel part of something. That those people will be with them forever because of how, like Maya Angelou said, because of how they made them feel.
Right. And and their communities defend them, like, sometimes too. Not like we're going overboard a little bit, like we get it. You're a great fan, but maybe not.
That's the internet
houses and things like that.
I don't want to repeat because everything that Elisa said, I feel the same way about Taylor Swift and Beyonce. And I don't love every piece of music that they create. I just feel like the way that they have, how they've navigated their careers and their lives, I fully respect. I talk to my daughters about it all the time, and I want them to be role models because of how they've created their own system. They don't need the system. The system needs them. And they're like, here's how it's going to work. Okay.
Nice.
This is how I'm going to do it. So I appreciate that. And I do have to give a shout out. It's funny. I'm writing about this. So it's top of mind, but Wu-Tang Clan is, for me. And again, you may or may not like the music. I happen to really like some of it and to other parts of it, but I saw the series on how they formed as a group. Yeah. And it so spoke to me. And the part that really spoke to me is that when RZA decided to put this group together, he said, look, we all are independents. We all are trying to make it in this business that is really quite heinous and spit people out. And he had been spit out. And he said, let's just figure this out together. We will have a contract where you can do whatever you want individually. We hope we can rep you. If not, someone else can, but we're going to do this work together. We're going to build this together. And then you have options. But let's all lift each other up. And it was the group and their success as a group that launched everyone's individual careers. Yeah. And right now it's like a binary model. You pick one. Either you do it as a group or you break off and, everyone's all upset when that happens. That was part of the deal. Everyone can grow in their own direction.
Yeah. And I think Boy Genius has done that as well recently.
Yeah. They're kind of like a super group model where there are 3 different artists, of which I would say one was the most prominent, and the other 2 were a little less so. And they came together and they really just did this first EP, right? And then they did an album, a full album, which was nominated for all the Grammys. And then they did another EP, and now they're saying they don't, and they toured, and now they're saying, that might be it. And of course, they developed this huge following, and so nobody wants that to be it. We want them to have the Wu-Tang Clan model. Because I have some of their individual albums, but those records by Boy Genius are just special.
I think the point that we're all making is just because the system's there that way doesn't mean you have to conform to it. You can create your own structure, really, which is, I kind of feel like that's what optionality is, because as I was reading the description and looking at the website, what I thought about was menopause. And why? Because, I'm 47. I'm not afraid of saying my age, and I'm trying to normalize talking about menopause because it is not like this.
Yeah, me too.
Had I known what was going to happen, I think I would have survived it a little bit better. But what I'm seeing is women like us who are like, I'm 15 years down the road of building this business, but I was in corporate for 11 years. who are really at our prime and have this great, mental real estate from all of the experiences we have. But for some reason, we're aging out of the workplace, which I don't get it. So when I saw optionality, I was like, maybe this is the solution.
Well, I think you've nailed what was one of our instigators, which was that right when we have developed the most experience, have so much expertise, broad perspective, let's just call it like wisdom. And you don't have to be like I think I'm the oldest one on this call. You don't have to be my age to like have wisdom. You can have it at 45. You can have it at 40. You can have it. I don't think optionality is dependent on an age, but what it's dependent on is that you have like peak capabilities and skills and perspective to offer, but you also have, whether it's other desires or other responsibilities or other interests, like it doesn't matter why, but you are not thinking you're going to put all your irons in one fire or all your eggs in one basket. The last 20 years have seen workplace disruption after workplace disruption, 9/11, dot-com bust, 2008 crash, the gig economy, of course, the lockdown, the great resignation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And companies have proved over and over again that they are not putting all their eggs in your basket. They are not keeping all their irons in your fire, that they need to make business decisions. And that involves humans. And so humans would be well served by not giving more than they can expect to get. No matter how much you love your company, you love its mission, you love your colleagues, things can change. And I think Christina Wallace, that Jory mentioned, said it's actually you have the most job security when you have more than one thing that you kind of are active in, and having that optionality. And so no matter what's driving you to want more optionality, having more optionality is a form of job security, is a form of life security, and it's giving as good as you get. And I would just like to see, I'm tired of people talking about humans like it's the housing market. Oh, it's the employers market, it's the employees market. That's just like saying it's a buyers or sellers market on housing. And I'm like, we are not houses, we are humans. And how about it's in a market where everybody gets benefit from getting the most from the people who are the best in whatever. Why does it have to look one way? Full-time employment, W-2, that's it. I mean, maybe it does for some people, but it doesn't have to. And I think that's what optionality is trying to put words around, trying to put standards of practice around, guidelines around, and just help people think about things differently. Because you know what? When we started BlogHer, no one thought a mom blogger, a stay-at-home mom in a small town with a modest audience, no one ever thought she could make a business model out of that. But you can make a business model out of that when you work together, when you aggregate, when you bring people together and say, we are powerful because we're all working for the same goal. And in this case, in both cases, really, the goal was having more optionality. And soapbox and rant.
What really resonated with me and just hit me in the heart and soul, Elisa, about your passionate call to arms, that's what I really see it as, is I was in corporate from 99 to 2009 when I got laid off, right? And that year I was in radio sales for Clear Channel. Yeah, I'm calling them out. Yep. And I recovered, I think it was $680,000 in new local revenue in 2008 when nobody was spending money on that. Recovered $1.8 million in revenue from clients that were pissed off at the customer service that our company had given them. And I turned that around. And then some other number for national. I was way past my budget, which usually I was. I'm kind of like the tortoise. But when I cross the finish line, usually it's 300 times more than what my colleagues are doing, right? Because it was all about their relationships. And I will tell you, the way they laid me off was like a stranger, like I was a stranger they had never set eyes on before. And they walked me like a criminal. And the reason was that they put my numbers through a corporate budget matrix, which I have looked up budget matrix. I have talked to all my friends in corporate. Nobody knows what that is. So that's a made up word. They didn't even have the respect to give me honesty. And that was it. It didn't matter that I had worked with them from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 5 days a week. And, gave up time with my family. They didn't care. They didn't care.
Right. Well, and some of that is because the corporate model requires HR, when they're laying you off, to not open the door to conversation, to not take that in. Like, I mean, I don't know if you've been, I've actually had to go through a training for laying off. And I, by the way, did not do what I was told, but
me either. Yeah.
But there is, and it's always about, you don't want to get sued. You don't want to leave, anything open for countersuit. So you've got to suddenly become this robotic, you can't, no one can answer a question. You can't say, well, if you're asked a question, like, well, why? Is it my performance? Thank you. Please proceed to the exit, right? Like, you can't have a real conversation. And I think that, that is the tenor overall. I think that is just one more way, as I'm losing my AirPod, that corporate is losing touch with the human. And yes, hopefully, as part of our other mission is not just, of course, normalizing the independent life, it's also working with organizations on how they can better structure work, communications, ways of being to better attract talent and to have a better relationship with it. It's not an all or nothing proposition, right? It's like, hey, you're not going to give me full-time guaranteed work. I'm not giving you full-time guaranteed work either, but we can still benefit from each other. Let's have a real human relationship. And it's probably going to yield far more than the alternative.
I think you wrote this recently, Jory. It's like, the idea that having a full-time job is going to be more stable. I understand the perspective, but you can just as easily lose a full-time job as you did, Kelly. Yeah. But here's the other thing. Managers are thrust into management often with little to no training. I was just on a webinar this morning that my friend Erica Keswin, who writes great books about, dealing with people as humans. This whole thing about we're humans. We're not assets. We're not houses. We're humans. And emotion is we all share that we have emotion. They always tell you when you lay someone off, don't make it about you. They'll make it sound like if you show emotion, you're making it about you. And there is a total difference between asking someone you're laying off to comfort you because you feel so bad about laying them off. No one should see that, but they should see that you have emotion. Like, you were a close colleague. I have laid people off, and I will just say it. I have cried. Because I loved them, and it didn't matter. We needed to cut, and there are a lot of other things you can try. Sometimes cutting people is the last resort, and some companies are better about making it the last resort than others. But sometimes it just happens, and it should be upsetting. You should show emotion. You should be human.
Here's the great lesson, because, I'm always like, okay, now at the time I was not. I was crying and, pulling my hair out and gnashing my teeth and wailing. Not like that, but, but let's see, 15 years down the road, hindsight is 2020. But for me now to be able to walk organizations through a way to humanely lay somebody off, I'm able to do that, and whatever I can do to help your initiative to work with those organizations, please let me know, because I keep saying to them, if y'all would just pay attention to your people, you're never going to have to worry. But anyway,
the main thing is we're not going back to 2019 because people got that space and time to think about how they had been working and to say, I don't want to do that anymore. And the more talented someone is, the more they're going to feel like, we had John Gerzema, who's the CEO of the Harris Poll. He was on our webinar that we did last month, and he shared a piece of data that I was surprised. And he said, I think it was 71% of this is professional workers, knowledge workers. Obviously, other industries may be different. He said 71% of American employees think that their company needs them more than they need the company, that they're confident they could get another job if they had to. So, you think that because there are some layoffs happening in certain sectors that people are going to, I'll never forget the last tech job I worked. The CEO was standing around saying, this was during the dot-com bust, that we had gone through the boom and now it was the bust. And he said, oh, well, everyone should just feel lucky they have a job, right? And he wasn't talking to me, but I was walking through the C-suite area. And so I stopped and I turned and I said, well, as long as you feel lucky to have such smart, capable people working for you, we can all feel lucky. And he just kind of looked at me and I just kept walking. And I was like, but that is the perspective sometimes people in charge get because they lose sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a great note to end on. What do you two think?
Let's do it.
Okay. So I am going to say thank you so much to both Elisa Camahort Page and Jory Jardins. Thank you, Miss Adley, for that. You all are just, you're amazing. I'm grateful to be alive when you are. If any of our audiences or any of our listeners want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Our website is optionality.life. That'll redirect you to our Substack, where our content is living, where you can sign up for a membership and then get access to our Slack. We are each our first name at optionality.life. And I don't know, my personal website is elisacp.com. I don't know, Jory, do you have one you want to share?
Not one that's updated.
Oh, it's the cobbler's children without shoes.
That's exactly right.
100%. I used to say that.
I will say this. I do write a personal Substack called Pause, which is stories of, of marketing fairness and hormones. You can make of that as you will, but.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I just loved being with you, and I'm so glad Cecily Kellogg, our very valued member of our team, brought you into my orbit. And if there's anything I can do to support either one of you, please don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you to our audience for listening. It's our intention on Hidden Human to inspire you to go out and have authentic conversations to deepen the connections in your life. Thank you all so much and make it a great day.